Do you feel you have equitable access to accessible parking in British Columbia? Join us on December 3rd, 2021 from 1 to 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for our next Accessible Community Forum and help us explore possible solutions and resources to bridge the gap between the accessible parking you currently experience and what it could become. Presented by the Disability Foundation and co-hosted with the Connector Society and the Social Planning and Research Institute of British Columbia, this event takes place on Zoom and is an open, honest, and inclusive dialogue between a panel of organizational representatives and our beautiful province's diverse disability community. Register today and help inform the conversation by taking our survey at acfparking.eventbrite.ca. Hello, and welcome to Discover Stories on Reimagine Radio. My name is Sean Burdett, an intern with the Vancouver Adapted Music Society, and today we have a very special guest of mine, Hannah Wilson. Hannah, thank you so much for coming on today. How's it going?
Thank you. I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So why don't we start off by just telling us about yourself?
Yeah, well, I'm 24. I went to school for social work. I graduated from Humber back in Ontario, and I currently work in office administration at a law firm. So that's nice. And I'm an activist, so I advocate in many different sectors, and disability is one of them.
Right on, right on. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your disability?
Yeah, so fibromyalgia is why I'm here. That's the disability that I mostly deal with. I do deal with ADHD on top of that. But for the purpose of this podcast, we'll focus on fibro. It's kind of hard to define fibro because it's understudied, and then it appears so differently in different people that have it. So it's mostly characterized by widespread pain, fatigue, and cognitive issues. And if you were to look at what system it affects the most, some people say it's musculoskeletal, some say it's like a nervous system problem, and new research is pointing to autoimmune issues, even though there's no biomarkers for it, so they can't just like take your blood and be like, yeah, you've got fibro. So it's kind of this, I like to think of it as sort of an elusive thing. A lot of doctors don't even believe that it's real, or that it's kind of like the hysteria of body health, if you will. So
wow.
Yeah, it's kind of a quick overview of fibro.
Sounds really complex.
Yeah.
So what's your life like with fibro?
What is my life like? Basically, if you're living day to day and you think of like these are my major tasks for the day, these are like the smaller things going on in my life. Fibro is like the overarching thing. Everything links back to it, and all my decisions are made from it. So what that looks like is just really prioritizing myself and my time. Yeah, it affects every aspect of my life, whether it's working, my friends and family life, my physical and exercise life, if you will, recreation. It's all affected by fibro and chronic pain, and it's made me have to really reassess what I do and where I put my time and energy. Because it is an invisible illness for me, I still live a optically normal life. I go to work 5 days a week. I went to school for a few years, so it doesn't really look that I don't look like that different from any average person, but mentally it's still there.
It sounds absolutely exhausting just having to work your life around.
Yeah. I mean, it's exhausting to work your life around it, but then it's exhausting to have it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So how did the initial diagnosis change your life?
Yeah, so, there's So the diagnosis aspect to it, it's been years trying to get my diagnosis. I got the onset of it back in around this time in 2016. I went through a very emotionally traumatic experience, and shortly after, the onset of symptoms started. At first, it didn't really alert anything bad. It just kind of felt like I had a knot in my shoulder blade that didn't go away. And then after, I don't know, maybe 6 months and it not going away, I was like, oh, okay, there's probably something more going on. The first year of having it, it was me dealing with this immense loss that I was going through, and then all of these physical symptoms coming on. So it was really confusing at first, and doctors were like, go get a massage, like whatever, we're not really going to investigate anything. So the first year was doing a lot of research, dealing with the emotional effects of this loss. And so for the past 5 years, it's been me, like myself, doing all of the research and then going to doctors and being like, this is what I want. I want this test. I want this blood test. I want these scans, and kind of doing the work myself, which is exhausting in its own way. And when it comes to fibro, at least in Canada, getting a diagnosis you don't really get a piece of paper with a stamp on it that's like, we diagnose you with this. It's like you go to a bunch of different doctors or specialists and they're like, yeah, I mean, the symptoms you claim are in line with fibro, so you likely have it, but because there's no biomarkers for it, there's no way to really confirm it. That being said, it wasn't until last summer that I saw a rheumatologist who ruled out like arthritis and other autoimmune diseases, and so that was kind of the final thing that was like, yeah, you've got fibro, because it was all a process of elimination essentially.
Right.
So yeah, it's been 5 grueling years of dealing with this onset of a lifelong condition, dealing with that emotional loss that I had, as well as like being my own doctor essentially.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds incredibly frustrating, but good on you for really taking your health into your own hands. And
you have to.
Yeah.
Doctors in Canada are stretched really thin, not only because of COVID, but even pre-COVID, it's commonplace to just not have a family doctor because nobody's taking patients. We just don't have enough doctors for the population that we have. So it creates a situation where doctors have zero incentive to, like, unless you're dying, to really investigate your problems. Most doctors give you a 15-minute time slot on the phone nowadays. So
yeah,
accessing quality care is far and few.
You mentioned earlier how you needed to sort of rework your life to fit around your fibro. What sort of lifestyle changes did you have to make as a result of your disability?
The biggest thing was I've just had to learn how to take it slow and to really prioritize myself, and really learn how to prioritize myself even if it may appear selfish in another person's eyes. Prioritizing rest and sleeping and not overexerting myself, and learning my body's and mentally my boundaries when it comes to everything, everyday life. On a more practical level, I've had to learn, what exercises work best for me. Although this is kind of controversial when it comes to the disabled community, yoga and stretching has been a life changer for me. I can't go a single day without doing my sun salutations and my stretches throughout the day. Really playing around with my diet and what works for me to help manage my symptoms. Back when I was a teenager, I was kind of going through that partying phase that you sometimes see with teenagers. So that definitely came to a halt. And then I also used to be a big dancer. I like to go to concert and shows and dance the night away. And that's not really something I can do anymore. And if I do, I have to, just go to that show for an hour for the act that I want to see. But yeah, I also used to be really big into exercising when I was in high school. And again, just for clarity, I started to get my fibro when I was 18 or 19, so I was about a year out of high school. So yeah, I used to be super into exercising. I loved to run to the point where I'd be running twice a day, and then I got into weightlifting later on in high school, and I loved it. And unfortunately now with fibro, I can't run anymore. Yeah, which kind of sucks, but you're forced to find what works for you. So that's kind of like, yeah.
In that process of you having to let go of some of your hobbies, did you manage to find others along the way?
In the past 5 years that I've had it, I kind of stopped exercising because there's the pain aspect, but then there's also the fatigue aspect, and I just didn't have it in me to exercise. Now that I used to live in Ontario, now that I'm in BC, hiking has become my new, my saving grace. Now that I'm living in the city, as opposed to living out on the outskirts where I was really close to hiking trails, I can't hike as much, but I found that low impact exercise like hiking was amazing, because that way I could still exercise and have that aspect in my life. Plus I just love nature. So hiking has been really great for me. But yeah, anything high intensity I just can't do anymore. It's just not, yeah.
What do you feel has been the hardest part about your disability?
That's a tough question. I mean, you're in constant pain. There's never really a time when you don't have some sort of pain happening. It might be a little extreme to say this, but it's almost like low intensity torture in a way. It's just always there. It's literally like a monkey on your shoulder, if that's even the saying that I'm looking for. But there's also a big grief aspect. So when I got this, I was 18, and I'm still, I'm 24. That's still really young to be feeling the way that I do. And so you're grieving kind of how your old body worked. You're grieving the future that you might have had if you're not dealing with this. And then, I'm wondering what's the rest of my life going to look like. It's not quite a death sentence, because it's not, but it's a, you're going to have a difficult time for the rest of your life sentence.
Right.
So it takes a toll mentally, for sure. And also not knowing how other life events will affect my body, if I ever want to have a child, or how the natural process of aging is going to affect me physically. Fibromyalgia isn't classified as a, I don't know, I can't remember the medical term, but it doesn't get worse technically as you get older. But your body still has other issues that naturally occur as you age, which can be exacerbated by the fibro. So, yeah, it's heavy to think about what your future is going to look like. And just not, because it is an invisible illness, for me at least, not feeling super supported by my community, my community, my friends, my family. It's a lot of always explaining yourself and reiterating things that you said before, and people that are close to you not doing their own research or not asking you, how can I help? Or like, what are your needs as a person with a disability? So yeah, I would say those are the biggest challenges with